So I stumbled upon this video. It's definitely old, and I'm definitely late to this debunking of it. It's by a Godzilla guy, and it is called The Real Composite Godzilla. Now, I have nothing against this YouTuber at all. I actually like a lot of his content. But this video in particular has some of the I don't want to say stupid, but incorrect scaling I've ever heard in my entire life for Godzilla, especially a theoretical composite of Godzilla. If it starts out with him saying that he dislikes the idea of a composite Godzilla because he can't find where it originated from, well, that's the thing. It's a composite. Composites aren't just made. They're something that every character has. There's composite Goku. There's composite Superman. All it is when you take everything a character has from every continuity and you mix it together. It's not some thing that some guy just thought of one day. Composites exist for pretty much every character out there. It's just something people bring up. It's a theoretical thing. Next thing he brings up is why he dislikes it, and the main two reasons: consistency and proof. Well, consistency, obviously, I understand why he dislikes some of the composite Godzilla scaling. Some of it it's just stupid, because some people don't even know what they're talking about before they open their mouth. The other one is proof. Well, some people are going to have proof, some people aren't. I'm going to be one of those guys who has proof for a real composite Godzilla. No discredit to this video at all. It obviously took a lot of time to make, as he mentions during the video. But I am definitely going to have to go over some of the just false information in it about Godzilla scaling. It brings up Legendary Godzilla versus Godzilla Ultima, which is a whole it's an argument I'm not going to get into this. It gets really stupid with some of the crazy stuff people pull out. Personally, I do agree with them. I think Legendary Godzilla would beat the current Ultima Godzilla. I do not think that he would be able to beat a true form singular point Godzilla. That would just not go very well for Legendary Godzilla. However, since we haven't really seen that at full power yet, we can't actually say for sure. Then he goes into Godzilla NES and talking about consistency again. This is a composite, so you're not going to have consistency because this isn't like a Godzilla NES. Godzilla NES is a continuity. A composite is going to be chaotic by nature. You're mixing a bunch of characters that aren't even really the same character. They just share the same name and are within the same series. Like, for instance, Shin Godzilla and Legendary Godzilla. Well, they're both Godzilla. They are not the same character. One's a mutated, giant, living nuclear reactor that would evolve into essentially a god. The other one's essentially just a super predator with insane power. They are not the same character. They don't have the same origins, but you're considering them the same guy and fusing them together with like 200 other Godzillas. There's not going to be consistency there. There can't be. You're going to have to find a consistency. And the consistency is you take the highest ends of Godzilla and you make that the new consistency. He proceeds to talk about the composite Godzilla popping up in videos. Well, I'm sure as we can all tell, obviously when people pop up in videos, characters, composite characters in particular, fans are going to go stupid with it, especially if they're a super fan. That's just how fights work. People go insane until somebody steps in. What he's trying to say is that there's no consistency to a composite Godzilla, and then saying the two limits that he brings up are light speed or tearing through time, which are both things a theoretical composite Godzilla could most likely do. Most Godzillas have light speed feats, which he's going to try to say they don't in a second. That is false. I'm going to talk about that soon. And the tearing through time is something we only see with higher ends Godzillas, but it's definitely something they are capable of. Not something they do a lot, but something that they could easily do, especially if you're fusing them all into one being. So both of these theoretical things are things they could definitely do if they were a composite. It then brings up Godzilla Bonds and Blood as something that pops up when you search composite Godzilla, stating that people use it as the design composite Godzilla. The reason for this is, there are theoretical designs for composite Godzilla. Composite Godzilla isn't something one person made, so there's no official design. Bonds of Blood Godzilla is just a design people seem to like and seem to think it matches the composite look the most. That's the only reason they use it. Bonds of Blood Godzilla is definitely not a composite Godzilla. Something similar, but not really a true composite. It shows a bunch of images of designs people use as composite Godzilla. Again, the reason for this is composite Godzilla does not have an official design. You would have to make your own. Brings up a point I actually agree with, and that is that composite Godzilla makes the community more hated, and the main reason for this is composite is not an official thing. And if you are going to have composite Godzilla fight somebody, you should have them fighting another composite, and you should research thoroughly for what a theoretical composite could do, and you should also say this isn't official by any means, because the theoretical composite Godzilla is so hard to scale saying that you know everything about it after you did like a whole 2 seconds of research is honestly insane. Also, he brings up people having Godzilla beat Superman and Goku. Well, some versions of Godzilla might be capable of doing that, depending on which version of Goku and Superman they're fighting. Having composite fight a non-composite is just not fair for the other character. So composite fans are kind of right, but also saying that composite Godzilla beat them both is not really, and it's just stupid. It's like saying Super Saiyan 5 Goku would beat Superman. A fan-made character would beat a non-fan-made character. Who knew? It's common sense, and it is very annoying when I see people comment this. So if you are one of the people that comments composite Godzilla would stomp everything, you're kind of right, but stop doing it. It's just annoying everybody. It brings up how this leads to kids arguing with middle-aged men in comment sessions, which I feel like happens regardless, because let's face it, middle-aged men that are in comment sessions arguing with children, and children that don't want to shut up are just, they're going to pop up and fight debates, let's face it. Then he brings up how many Godzillas he's using, which is admittedly the vast majority, if not almost every Godzilla that's ever existed, besides a couple fan-made ones. And then he has an entire team of researchers on this, so he definitely researched. Unfortunately, some of the research is not exactly great, but, I mean, respect to this guy for going through this much effort for this. And again, I have nothing against this channel or this YouTuber at all in any way. And describes how the team of researchers added up how strong Godzilla and how strong and fast Godzilla is overall. The way they did this, I do disagree with. I don't think you should simply add up everything. I think you should simply go with the higher ends. But it's the results they got that I have a big issue with. I'm about to get into those. First off with Godzilla's lifting strength, which I can already see is wrong, because if Godzilla was able to rival Thor from the comics, who has a much stronger lifting strength than what he gives this particular composite Godzilla, then he should be a lot stronger than the number he says, which is over 2 million tons, which is admittedly quite a bit, but nothing compared to Godzilla, who has shattered infinite dimensions in Godzilla in Hell and done way more impressive stuff with this. Admittedly, that is with atomic breath, but still his physical strength, if it's compared to Thor through Marvel Godzilla, and since Godzilla in Hell is usually considered stronger than that, maybe not physically, he should scale to Thor, or at least closer to Thor than that. It then uses the telekinesis to highball it around 100 million tons, which doesn't really make sense, but okay. He then mentions both moving tectonic plates and matching Thor, which would both be well above the numbers he gave Godzilla, so he kind of debunked himself there. The problem is he uses feats that don't really matter. For instance, he mentions destroying a meteor after charging atomic breath for 5 years, when other Godzillas could have destroyed a meteor instantly with a single blast. Again, this is why you should simply use the higher ends instead of mixing them all into one, mixed attack. For instance, adding all their strengths together is not how composite works. It's almost like he's trying to make it where all these Godzillas did the fusion dance in Dragon Ball repeatedly until they were one thing. Again, simply using the higher ends would be the easier way to do this, as mixing them all together wouldn't make sense, as it's supposed to be a new individual Godzilla. It is all of them combined, but it's the way he's perceiving this Godzilla is a new entity, not a fusion of them all. You could consider a composite Godzilla either way, but usually I think it's just simply easier, and it's a lot better just to use higher ends, as Godzilla's higher ends are already hard enough to scale. Why add in extra stuff you don't need to, especially if the scaling is going to be off anyways? And the next thing is the thing that made me have to make this video, and is when he claims that Godzilla cannot move faster than light, actually capping Godzilla's top speed at only 400 miles per hour. And he calls that light speed thing bullshit. No, what is bullshit is saying that Godzilla can only move at 400 miles per hour, because he has literally shown light speed reactions since way early in the Showa era, when he's dodging literal lasers. In the Heisei era, Space Godzilla is able to travel at speeds, or depending on how you scale the Godzilla universe, if you scale it infinite, well, he's moving at infinite speeds. If you scale it similar to our own, he's moving at speeds around the same level as characters like Omni-Man from Invincible, which is massively faster than light. And his crystals are faster than that. You could argue when Godzilla's dodging the crystals aren't moving that fast, but why would he slow them down to battle? People like to use the combat and travel speed argument. I call that bullshit. Why would you slow a crystal down when you're trying to kill the thing you're fighting? He then mentions his own personal calculations for how fast Godzilla can swim, run, and fly. The running thing is already false because we know Godzilla in Hell can travel across infinite realms in finite time by running. The flying thing would be false because his flight should be equal to his actual run speed. And we've seen legendary Godzilla swim faster than he has him swimming in this video, so immediately it's through the Hollow Earth tunnels, but again, he could probably swim faster if he's able to run at infinite speed in Godzilla in Hell, so yeah, they're all not correct. Then he gets into Godzilla space traveling because he's using Space Godzilla in this composite, which isn't even Godzilla. If you're going to add Space Godzilla, who is made from Godzilla's DNA and is technically a clone of Godzilla, not even Godzilla himself. I mean, I guess it's no different adding other Godzillas, but I just don't understand. I personally would not add Space Godzilla as a composite. To me, it feels like you should, if you're doing that, you should automatically add in Biollante, Destroya, other beings that have Godzilla's DNA, which would only make things impossible to scale. I think adding in kaijus that are not Godzilla makes it too difficult. It gives Godzilla 2 made-up speed feats, pulling a planet with him by just flying, which, okay, I don't know how that makes sense in space. Is he producing gravity? Or is it just the sheer force? Okay, and then reversing the pull of a black hole. I don't know how that would work, but okay. And also with infinite speed, he'd be able to do more impressive things through space travel. But, okay, let's add made-up feats, because, sure. Again, I mean no disrespect to this guy, but those were unneeded. The intelligence segment I sort of agree with, besides the part when he says he's far smarter than a human. I mean, yeah, he is, but only in certain aspects. Godzilla, by definition, is an incredibly intelligent being, especially if it's composite, but he doesn't think like a human. Comparing him to a human doesn't really make sense. He's more comparable to a god or an eldritch being if it's a composite, due to how some Godzillas function within their universe. Now for abilities, he goes on for a while mentioning almost everything Godzilla's ever done, and he does a pretty thorough job at it. He then mentions a ton of durability feats, but all you really had to say is that he can survive beyond infinite attacks in Godzilla in Hell. That would have covered the higher ends, and it would have upscaled everything else. So mentioning everything he's ever survived just made the video longer. Again, it's simple. It's simpler just to go with the higher ends and not try to stack everything on top of it, because stacking stuff on top of infinity is just it's not smart. It's not worth it. It then mentions how long it takes for Godzilla to travel between superclusters. As I've already explained, that's going to be false with the infinite speed feats in Godzilla in Hell. He then makes an entire origin story and story for this Godzilla, which again isn't how composites work, because that's not what a composite is. The main problems with this video is the scaling is off by a lot. He claims Godzilla doesn't have speed past light. I've already mentioned Godzilla scales to infinite speed due to several variants of Godzilla moving way faster in light, and some moving across infinite dimensions. Godzilla can also arguably scale to 4 to 5D through Godzilla in Hell. Marvel's Godzilla matched Thor, meaning his strength scaling was automatically false. Godzilla has swam faster, and he claims Godzilla can swim. He brings up feats that surpass his own scaling at several points. Obviously, him and a team of researchers researched this for months, so I'm not going to claim that this is entirely inaccurate. And a ton of effort was put into this video, but this is not a real composite Godzilla. Not in the slightest. A real composite Godzilla would be a lot stronger and it would be almost impossible to scale a real composite Godzilla. So using natural arguments is, like he said, pretty stupid to do. So I recommend just not using composite Godzilla in verse matches until somebody uses the correct scaling and makes an actual composite Godzilla, which I'm definitely not going to do. That would take years of research into so many obscure Godzilla variants and tons of fact checking, and I'm not going to waste time doing all that, because in the end my scaling might end up being false, like this scaling was. And much like him, I do have a problem with composite Godzilla, for the simple reason that even if you somehow did get all your research right and use the higher ends, which would be the best way to do a composite Godzilla, the higher ends themselves vary. I mean, heisei Godzilla alone, one of the strongest Godzillas, can scale anywhere from planetary to beyond infinite several times over. So, getting the actual higher ends requires tons of research into it, and you kind of have to make your own, decision on what is your opinion of the higher end. Not all Godzilla's highest ends are actually clear-cut. But if anyone watching this video is some of the people that like using composite Godzilla in fights, I recommend instead of using composite, you simply use heisei, Godzilla in Hell, or Marvel's Godzilla, as those three tend to be the strongest, and can scale to a lot of the characters you like to say composite Godzilla can beat. And you could make a fair case that they can beat characters like Goku or potentially Superman. However, using composite Godzilla is only going to lead to arguments, and if you haven't went through the research to find a real scaling for a real composite Godzilla, just don't use them. Again, I have nothing against Godzilla Guy. He's a pretty decent YouTuber. His content is definitely good, and I recommend subscribing to him. However, this video in particular, I had to comment on some of the scaling in it. As I plan on making a lot more Godzilla content soon, so if you like that type of stuff, please consider subscribing or liking the video. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.